Hey everybody, Melissa here. So I created a couple of videos in Microsoft Word and Excel where we created a form and added a submit button. And when that submit button was clicked, it invoked Microsoft Outlook and sent the results via email. Now, I was asked several times if it's possible to do the same thing in LibreOffice Calc or LibreOffice Writer, and it is. Now, this is the exciting part. On a lot of levels, it's easier because we do not have to create Visual Basic scripting, or any scripting for that matter. And we can invoke other email clients besides just Outlook. Now, some of the other process is different, but the end result is the same. I cannot wait to show you how this works, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is an order form for Mel's Fruit Company, and we will be collecting standard information such as the company name, their contact person, what they're ordering, how they want it delivered, quantities, and things like that. So we're going to do just a little bit of formatting so the tools we'll be using are easier to access. So we're going to be spending quite a bit of time in forms and in tables. So what we're going to do is add these as toolbars. Now to do that, we'll go over to View, go down to Toolbars, and the first one we want to add is Form Controls. And over here, it's added all of our form controls as to where we can click to go in design mode. We have text boxes, checkboxes, radio buttons, and everything we need for that. If we go back to View and we go to Toolbars, the next one we want to add is Form Design. Now it adds this one at the bottom, and we're going to be utilizing form properties when we go to create our Submit button. And finally, if we go back to View, Toolbars, and go down to Table, it adds everything we need to make changes to any tables we insert. So let's go ahead and start creating our form. Now there's a couple ways we can go about this. Like we can go ahead and enter one of our fields like company name. We can go over to our form controls, select a text box, and we can draw it out. And that is perfect if that's the way you want to do it. However, I can't do it that way. I will have inconsistencies in text box sizes, radio buttons, checkboxes, and it will just be a mess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a table, and this will help me keep everything more consistent, and that way it will look better. So there's a couple ways we can insert a table. We can go up to Table and Insert, or we can do Control F12, and it will bring up our Insert Table box. Now the table name, it doesn't really matter. You can leave it as Table 1 or you can rename it something that makes sense to you, but I'm just going to leave it this. For our columns and our rows, you can try to determine how many you think that you'll need of each. However, it doesn't really matter what you choose because you can add, you can take away, you can split, or even merge the cells within your table. So it's kind of up to you how you want to do it. I know for sure I'm going to need 4 columns at least. And I'm going to start with about 5 rows. I think I need more than that, but I'm going to start with 4 columns and 5 rows. And I'm going to tell it to insert. And here is our table. So the next thing we're going to do to help us keep consistency within our forms is turn on the grid and tell everything to snap to the grid. Now how we're going to do that is go down to our design bar and click on Display Grid. And if you notice, it puts like little what I call polka dots, but these are actually square grids across the document. Then we're going to go down and we're going to click Snap to Grid. And that's going to help us keep consistency when we start adding text, text boxes, or anything else. So I went ahead and started creating the form with the information we need from our customer. We need the company name, contact information, delivery address, the fruit they want, the quantity, the desired delivery method and date, how they heard about us, and then they have to agree to payment terms. So now we're ready to start adding form controls to gather our information. So the first thing that you want to do is go to your form controls and make sure you are in design mode. If you are not in design mode, then everything is grayed out and you can't select everything. So click on design mode and you're ready to go. For our company name, we know that they're going to have to enter that information, so we want to make it a text box. So if we go over to our form controls and we select a text box, we can draw it out. And if you remember, when we clicked on Snap to Grid, I was just a little bit below this line and it snapped it back up into the box I drew it in. So that's where it really comes in handy. Now that we have our text box, we can make changes to it. So to get to the properties, double click on it, and it brings up our properties box. Over in general, when we look at our name, it says text box 1, but if we need to do something with that down the road, that's kind of confusing. So I kind of name these to correlate with what information I'm gathering. So in this example, I would call this company name. So if we look at some of our other properties, we can see that we can set the max text length. Well, I'm not going to on this one, but it might come in handy in some of our other text boxes. We can see if the field is visible, read-only, printable. We can see where it's at on the y-axis, the position, and we can change the background color if we want to. But I want to show you default text. Now, whatever we put in here is going to display in our text box. So let's just say we put enter company name here. We X out of it and it says enter company name here. And we're going to do the same thing for contact name, phone, email, and our delivery address. So I went ahead and created our text boxes. Now just to let you know, you can copy and paste these into other fields and then double click and go to your properties and make any changes you need to make so you don't have to recreate them every single time you need one. So now let's look at our fruit. And this is going to be a drop-down list because we don't want someone entering something we don't carry. So we are going to define in this drop-down list what fruits we have so they can choose from there. And how we're going to do that is go to our form controls, go down to list box and select it. And then we're going to draw it into our area. And now we're going to double click and go to general. And I'm going to name this fruit. And we can even put list box if we want. And then our options are pretty much the same, except for when we scroll down, we will see list entries. Now we could go in here and put them in here in quotes separated by a semicolon, but there's an easier way. If we go to the multi-line editing and click on it, it brings up this box. Now I have copied these from another application, so I'm just going to paste them. And it's put them in the area for us in quotes separated by the semicolon. So I'm going to tell this okay. And we can look down through here and everything else looks okay. The only thing is this multi-selection. We could put yes here, but I think that would be kind of confusing when they go to put in their quantity. So I would probably make another one that says fruit 1, fruit 2, fruit 3, and so on, instead of making this a multi-selection because that could be kind of confusing. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. Now we are in design mode, so we can't see our fruits listed, but if we exit design mode and we do our drop down, we can see that all of our fruits are in there. So I'm going to go back into design mode. And now we're going to look at quantity, and it's going to be a number that they can enter. So for this one, I'm going to go to my form controls and I'm going to make it a numerical field. And I'm going to draw it, double click on it. And in our properties, I'm going to name this quantity. And if we look at our properties, they look basically about the same. We can set minimums and maximums. If you only want someone to be able to order maybe 24 apples or 24 of whatever fruit they're selecting, then you can set those here, but I'm going to leave it alone. And everything else looks pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and X out of there. So now let's look at our desired delivery method. So I'm going to have 3 different options, but I don't necessarily want them in these 3 columns. I want them side by side. So I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I can either right click and merge or go down to my table toolbar and click on merge cells. So for our delivery method, we're going to use radio or option buttons. And the reason for that is it only allows them to choose one option. So they can't say, I want this delivered UPS and FedEx. They get one choice and one choice only. So how we're going to add those is go to our form controls and go down to our radio button or option button. And we're going to draw it. And we're going to double click to get to our properties. And we're going to go to General. And I'm going to name this one maybe Delivery Option 1. And then I'm going to make the label US Mail. And then all of our properties look good, with the exception of one thing we need to change, and that is this group name. And the reason we need to add a group name is because if we have option buttons anywhere on this form and we do not group them together, then they're going to be able to pick only one on the entire form. Okay? So in this case, since we're going to have 3 delivery options, I'm just going to name this something like that, Delivery Options. And then we're going to X out. And we're going to widen this just a little bit so it all shows. Now the same way that we did our text boxes, we can do down here. We can copy and paste this. So I'm going to do Control C, and then I'm going to space just a little bit, Control V, double click, go back into our options or properties, and then we'll probably name this Delivery Option 2, and we're going to name this one FedEx, and then the group name came over as Delivery Options. And then we're going to paste it one more time. Double click, General, we'll name this 3, and we'll name this one UPS, and our group name of Delivery Options came over. Now, if we were to create radio buttons anywhere else on this form, and we gave them a different group name, or it was just a standalone, they would be able to choose a different option for that one. So let's go ahead and X out. And there are our delivery method options. Now let's look at our delivery date. And again, I'm not going to need all 3 of these columns, so I'm going to select them, go down to my table toolbar, and go over to Merge Cells. And for our delivery date, of course, we're going to use a date field. So we're going to go to our form control, go down to date, and we're going to put it in there. And we're going to double click to get to our properties. Over in General, date field 1 is okay, and our properties look okay. You can consider changing, your date format. I think standard short is fine. The minimum date of 1800, somebody may accidentally enter something as 1986, so this is up to you if you want these changed. But for me, I think the defaults look okay, so I'm going to go ahead and X out. And that is our date field. Maybe make it a little bit bigger so there's plenty of room. So now let's look at how did you hear about us. Now this one is going to be a combination of checkboxes and a text box. Now the reason we're using checkboxes in this one and not radio buttons is because we want them to be able to pick more than one if that applies. So to get our checkboxes, under Form Controls, we're going to go down to our checkbox and we're going to add one of them. And we're going to double click under General. And you can rename this if you want. And our label is going to be, for this first one, TV. And if you look down through, all of our property defaults look okay. So I'm going to go ahead and X out. And it changed the label to TV. Now, just like with our delivery method, our text boxes, we can copy and we can paste. Double click. Go to General. I'm going to make this number 2. And we're going to change this to Internet. And we're going to X out, make the box a little bigger, and then we're going to paste it one more time. Double click, go to General, we'll make this number 3, Newspaper. And all of our properties are okay, so we're going to X out of there. And we're going to make this a little bit bigger so it shows. And now we're going to add one more. And we're going to double click. And we're going to call this one maybe number 4. And we're going to call it Other. Now, X out of there. We're going to add a text box so they can explain what other means. And we can do that a couple ways. We can go over and create a text box from our form controls, or we can go up here and copy this one and paste it. Go ahead and make it bigger. Maybe a little bit more. Double click, go into our properties, go to General, and we can change this to like maybe Other Explanation or something like that. I'm going to go down, and instead of saying enter contact name here, explain other here. And then one other thing that we want to change, instead of text type being single line, we want to make it multi-line so they can enter more than one line of text. And we're going to go ahead and X out of there. So now we want the customer to agree to our payment terms. And what we're going to do is put a checkbox here for them to say they have read this and they agree. So we'll go over to our form controls and get a checkbox and go ahead and draw it out. Double click. And we can rename it payment terms or whatever you want to name it. And instead of the label being a checkbox, we can make it blank. You can put in there, I agree, but I'm just going to leave it blank. And then all of our other properties look okay. So we're going to X out. And now our form is complete. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show anyone who does not want to use the submit button how to export this as a PDF and show you what it looks like and how it works so you can go ahead and start creating your own. After that, we'll hop right back in and start creating the submit button. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we are not in design mode. So if we go to our form controls, we turn off design mode by clicking it. Everything turns gray, so we're not in design mode. To export it as a PDF, we're going to go to File. We're going to go down to Export As. Now, you can export directly as a PDF, but I don't like to do that because I won't be able to make any kind of changes and it'll just export it as it is. So I like to do Export as a PDF to get the options box where you can choose pages, selections, but one thing you do need to check is it says Create PDF Form and Submit Form is PDF. And now we can click Export and tell it where to save the file. So this is our order form in a PDF. Now, as I'm looking at this, I probably should have put this contact information either below or above delivery address because it's going to make it kind of weird when we navigate. But hey, you can change it on yours and it'll keep me on my toes. So from anywhere in the PDF, hit Tab. It takes us to the first field. Miller's Market. This is going to be me with a different last name. 100 Your Street. And then 555, 555, 5555. And I do not have a second street address. And email is your email at email.com. And then Lexington, Kentucky 40515. Okay, now our fruit. Do our drop down, and they're there. So I want grapes. And in here, I want 100. Our delivery method, I prefer UPS. And if we notice, remember how I said you can only select one? That is working. Desired delivery date, let's put 8/25/2022, and it's going to take that. How did you hear about us? Well, TV, internet, newspaper, other, because I heard about you from a friend. And I do agree with your payment terms. So now all they have to do is save it and email it back to you. Now we'll hop back over to LibreOffice and get started on that submit button. All right, here we go. It's time to create our submit button. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we are back in design mode. If you look at our form controls, they're grayed out, so we are not. If we click on design mode, everything comes back to life. So to create the submit button, we're going to use push button. So if we go to push button and select it, we can make our submit button. And now we want to go into properties. Well, we have two different properties we're going to be working with. If we look at our form design toolbar, we're going to be working with control properties and we're going to be working with form properties. So let's start with control properties. And this brings up our push button properties. If we go to general, the name is push button 1, which is fine. Our label we want to change. I'm going to make this say click here to submit. And then it changes it. Now if we look, it's enabled, visible, printable. All of that is what we want it to be. Everything looks good. Let's change our font though. So let's click on our three dots And let's just make it bigger because, I wear glasses. I'm not going to be able to see that. Let's try 36 and see what that does for us. Font effects, let's change the color to white. And let's tell it, okay. Whoa, that's a little large, isn't it? Let's take it down just a little bit. So let's go back over. And let's make it about 26. See how that does. Whew, that's much better. So now let's change our background color. And let's make it like a green. I don't know why I like submit buttons everywhere to be green. And I'm so glad it looks like this so I can show you what happened. So there's this funny thing in LibreOffice that I do all of the time. If you scroll here, like I just did, looky there, it's changing the alignment. If you're scrolling through your properties, make sure you're over here, or you'll do like I did and move your writing. All right, so that is good there. Our action is going to be a submit form because that is what we're doing. And is there anything else? Nope, I think that looks good. So let's go ahead and X out of here. Now we're going to go into our form properties. And under General, Form is fine. Now we're going to enter the URL. So let me explain this. This URL we're going to put in where it's going to be mailed to. Now this is not who we are sending it to for it to be filled out. This is who it's going to be sent back to when they click on that submit button and it fires off the email client. Okay, so it's who it's coming back to once they filled it out and hit that submit button. So I'm going to make mine mail to, and we're going to do mailsfruitco@outlook.com. Okay, submission encoding is URL and our submission type is GET. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and X out of there. And with that, our submit button is created. That is crazy easy, isn't it? No coding, a few clicks of the mouse, type a few things, we're done. Yay. Now, let's save it as a PDF with the submit button. So once again, make sure that design mode is off. There we go. Everything's grayed out. We're good to go. Let's go up to File. And again, we're going to do Export As, not directly as a PDF, but export as PDF. Just to make sure everything looks okay. Create a PDF, we're good. And we're going to export it to wherever we want it to save it. And here is our order form with our submit button. Your recipients will have to download the PDF to their local machine, fill it out, and then click that submit button. But we can go ahead and test it out here. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill it out. So now let's see what happens when we click our submit button. Well now, what do we have here? This is so awesome, and this is what sets LibreOffice completely apart from Microsoft. If you've watched my tutorials on how to create a submit button in Excel and Word, you can only email those back through Microsoft Outlook. In this case, you can use Outlook, but you can use Webmail. Now, I have tested this out with my Outlook account for Mel's Fruit Company and my Gmail account, but you can also add others. If you put in your email address, your password, your IMAP, and your SMTP, and you can find these, say you want to use Yahoo, you can Google Yahoo's IMAP and SMTP, and it will give them to you here, and you add it, it will authenticate, and you can use it. But I'm going to cancel out of here for now. And I'm going to select my Gmail. Now my Gmail is not open in any browser on my computer, so let's see what happens. Preparing, connecting, and look what happened. It opened my Gmail, it authenticated, it logged me in, it sent it to Mel's Fruit Company. It says form returned, and it says what the form is, and it says the attached file is the filled out form. Please open it to review the data. And if you look down here, there is the form. So I'm going to go ahead and send it. So I come over to my Outlook account for Mel's Fruit Company. I double click on the email. There's the PDF, and I open it, and there is my order form with all of the information my customer entered. And there you have it. How neat is that? Now you can create a fillable form in LibreOffice Writer, send it out to your distribution list, and get all of your responses back via email. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Drop me a comment if you have any questions, feedback, or ideas for future tutorials, and be sure to click that subscribe button before you leave. And don't forget, if you need written instructions for this tutorial, hop on out to my website, melcompton.com, and you can find it there. And I'll see you in the next tutorial. Until then, thanks so much for watching.